What's up everyone, welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Gamer Dad channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. So my last build video or build guide video pretty much gives you everything you need to know about making your build. The one thing that I didn't talk about in that video were my weapons that I usually run with that build in detail. I did highlight that I use the Pestilence, but I didn't talk about it in detail. So I thought in order for me to cover some ground and also answer some questions that I got from other audience members about that video's weapon and another question about weapons, let me talk about my 3 favorite weapons in the Division 2 game. I think this is going to give you some sort of a, framework as to why I run these weapons and what I stand to gain or benefit from them. Now, I don't necessarily run a lot of weapon builds in regard to, say, the red builds. When you go out there, you have your all red, your Providence, your crit chance, crit damage, assault rifle build, and then you're using an assault rifle of a specific class. Usually those provide a roadmap, and the options for your better assault rifles in these kinds of scenarios are actually very limited. I'm not saying that they're limited in a bad way. I'm just saying you have a very good set of options that you can choose to maximize your DPS, because some other guns are probably not going to give you the best DPS in regard to builds like that. So you can understand why, you can go in and pick, say, if you have an Eagle Bearer, if you want to get one, there's a link in the description to a clan that can hook you up with an Eagle Bearer. Basically, they will train you how to run the raids. You will run the raids with them, and they will get you an Eagle Bearer. In some of those cases, you can use, say, the FAMAS, or if you want high DPS, a military AKM or one of those AK builds will kind of do the job for you. Or if you want to run a lot of crit, maybe in the dark zone, you want to go in and flush out enemies fast, the Dark Winner. So there's a specific set of weapons that can work for you. But in my case, that doesn't necessarily lean towards those builds. What are my 3 favorite weapons overall? Now, this is going to be very interesting. So let's just go ahead and talk about them. Number 1 in this particular category is my Pestilence LMG. Now, because of the way I run and because of the way I actually build my gear, this LMG actually does work. Its DPS is actually not the greatest when you're using the skill builds, but it does a very good job. In the weapon class builds, like, say, Striker, as some of you suggested in the comment section, you can stack up a bunch of damage and also stack up a bunch of the tick damage that also comes with the Pestilence, special talent that's actually on it. We'll look at that talent. We'll talk about it. So this is the Plague of the Outcasts. It says hits apply a debuff, dealing 100% weapon damage over 10 seconds. This stacks up to 50 times. Whenever an enemy dies with this debuff, all stacks are transferred to a nearby enemy within 25 meters. I'm all about damaging multiple enemies at the same time. This is why I find myself in the place where I'm using builds that do highlight, or in a sense, they accentuate that kind of a play style. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to switch my builds to one of my good old, Eclipse Protocol builds. There it is. And we're going to go back into the, the shooting range. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to look at exactly what I'm talking about. I want to spread as much damage as I possibly can. So I would like for everything that I'm doing to pretty much spread effects and do a lot of DPS. So as I apply my burn damage and then I apply a little bit of, say, the Pestilence damage, it just spreads. You see how the damage spreads, including the burn damage as well? That is a lot of extra damage. That's what I actually want. That's what I'm going for. Notice I didn't have to shoot much. And then the next, target in 25-meter range is also taking damage that I don't have to put out with my weapon while I'm staying in cover. So this theoretical scenario is why I use the Pestilence in conjunction with my build, even though many would argue and say, well, you do know that that weapon is probably not going to give you the best bang for buck. I absolutely agree. It will not give you the best bang for buck instantaneously, but over time, it is essentially the best in regard to how it harmonizes and synergizes with all of the others. And so that's basically my major, concern when I'm running with this particular weapon. And the good thing about the Pestilence is it's actually easier to get your hands on and to get a decent one that has good, stats on them, so that you can get the full, benefit of the weapon. Because in the way that I run it, I really do need all these stats. I actually need my 15% here. I need my 12% to damage out of cover and my 6% damage to armor. I can't spare any of this. So it took me a while to actually find one like this, and some I think optimization to be able to get one this close. I would love to get one that's fully maxed out, but this is what I have for now, and I'm not gonna sweat it. Number 2 is the Scorpio. The Scorpio is actually the best harmony in terms of using the Eclipse protocol, in my opinion. But the challenge with the Scorpio is the range can be very tricky. Now, in this game, shotguns do have a good range. I'm not saying that the range is actually a bad thing. I'm just saying that your optimal range is heavily reduced depending on how far, the target is. So at this distance, I'm not necessarily going to be getting the best damage that I can probably get my hands on. So on like this distance now, you can notice that damage is basically anywhere from 50, even 60% more in regard to how things spread. And of course, with Eclipse Protocol, if an enemy NPC dies with a status effect on them, that status effect also spreads as well. But again, the distance in regard to how much the damage is also a limiting factor when it comes to how I actually use this particular weapon. But by and large, you've seen how my build is actually influencing heavily the weapon choices that I'm actually making. And because this is my favorite build, or this is the build that I've actually run for such a long time, there's no stress in, trying to figure out what other weapons am I going to necessarily use, because these two already suit my playstyle. Now, the other weapon that I would say is my favorite weapon is quite generic in a sense. And you'd be like, what do you mean by quite generic? Well, okay. let me see how we're going to put this. Any weapon that can give me any enhancements to my status effects, if I'm running a status effect build using a talent like Perfect Perpetuation, is going to fall into that category. So it could be anything. It could be anything that is not, say, the LMG or the shotgun, because usually when I'm running in the open world, I'm running the Global Directives Pistolero. So ideally, I would love for my sidearm to be able to carry a lot of weight in regard to how I'm dealing damage. So using Perpetuation on a sidearm is good enough for me. If I'm using a turret and drone build and I'm running Pistolero, then using one of these TDI card customs is also just fantastic, because I can build around having the extra skill tier. I can actually swap one of these yellow cores in that event if I wanted to really do that. And I would have basically, my skill tiers still in place whenever I actually have this weapon, in hand. Basically, if you're using it, it grants you one skill tier. So pretty much I'm going to be gaining the benefits of those skill tier. I can use a red core to have more damage, or maybe stay a little bit more tanky. And so that's, in my opinion, a very gray area where I say the number 3 is kind of widespread, but I like the fact that this custom actually allows for me to be able to do that. If you notice, this one has in sync rolled on it, because I can use this to pretty much improve my damage as I'm shooting NPCs to improve my skill damage. I actually do complement it with the other build that I started out the video with, which is my turret and drone build. And I'll show you why I do use that. Okay, it says escape. Well, let's just go ahead and look at the pieces and I'll explain them to you. Actually, it's not exactly this one. It's another one. Where is it? There it is. It's this one in particular. I have a Hana U backpack and a Hana U mask to be able to benefit from the damage that they do. And then the Empress International for the skill duration, the refresh, and then the Wyvern for the skill damage, and Glass Cannon. That's pretty much it. The one trick, though, is on my backpack, I'm carrying this one really fun talent that I used to use a long time ago. I still do use it whenever I run a turn in a drone, and that is the Hana U name backpack that's called the Force Multiplier. This gives you the perfect combined arms talent. It says shooting an enemy increases your total skill damage by 30% for 3 seconds. So just keep shooting. And if if you have a pistol that has this talent, you're pretty much getting the buff, including what InSync is able to do for you, which is, if it says this, it says hitting an enemy grants 15% skill damage for 5 seconds. So when you pair up that, 15 and 35, I think it's additive. You're pretty much in a place where your skill damage has now pretty much been buffed significantly. Using a non-shield skill or damaging an enemy with a skill grants 15% weapon damage for 5 seconds. So you're getting this tit for tat where you're getting weapon and skill buffs given to you, and you're also using it with Force Multiplier. Basically, you're getting this insane increase in your damage as long as you're shooting. So these are some of my favorite weapons, and I'm sure you probably were wondering, oh man, I wonder if it's gonna be, say, maybe the backfire or something. No, I played the Division in like from a whole different perspective, because it's one of those games that lays out different cards for you to be able to pick out and play. Other fun guys that I like to run just because, just for, the sake of it, is my military AKM. I have myself one of those carbine 7s that's actually freaking good on my PlayStation account. I think it's almost maxed out, and I rolled Ranger on it. It's almost like a sniper assault rifle, fully automatic. It's insane the way the thing can work. And then my Pyromaniac is also there because I like status effects. I'm getting more, overall, but I'll have to build differently for that in that regard. But it then brings those to no longer the top 3. These are now like, top 5, top 6, top 7, or whatever it may be. But by and large, these are the weapons that you're going to see me running for the most part. I've run them since they've been out. I just like what they do. I enjoy using them. They suit my play style and they suit my primary builds. When I switch out of these builds, nonetheless, those weapons are mostly gone, except maybe the Scorpio can actually fit into multiple builds. And let me show you another build. I may have a blueprint here where I use a Scorpio. This build here, once in a while, I'd run this tank build with a small shield and I'll use the Scorpio. And I'm using the Scorpio because I want to also leverage this other fun talent here. Where is it? It's called Galvanized. Where you at? Where's that backpack? Oh, there it is. And this says, applying blind, ensnare, confuse, or shock to an enemy grants 40% of your armor as bonus armor to allies within 20 meters of that enemy. So again, this is a weapon this is how I use them. So I need something that can apply a lot of status effects as fast as possible. So the constant shooting with, that particular weapon is getting the job done for me. So if you have any questions, if you have any concerns or any suggestions, leave them in the comment section. What are your favorite weapons in the Division 2? How do you use them? Thanks for watching. We'll talk pretty soon, hopefully in another one. Peace out.